So you said like you were back in Cabo. Just why'd you move back there for a little bit?
Um, well, I mean, I lived there from 21 until last year. So, yeah, I just went back to visit and it's so lovely. It's an amazing place. It's also very transient, you know?
Oh
So
yeah.
what made me love it so much is my friends there and everybody is slowly, because, you know, we're all pretty nomadic.
Yeah.
Which why we all ended up there,
Where are
you
they
know?
all? Where are they all from?
I mean, all over Australia, Canada, like
Love the Aussies.
everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
It's always like, have you ever noticed that when you live in a different country and then you bump into someone with the same accent, you're like, it's like the Spider-Man meme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like I bumped into someone recently at a party. There was an Aussie, and then Aussies were talking, and then the whole party was like, "Oh, the Aussies are talking." So that was quite fun. But what do you do up in Cabo? Because like you mentioned before that like you used to own a gym. Do you do any fitness stuff there in Cabo while you were? Or is it just more of a holiday thing?
I mean, really, I sold my martial arts school when I moved down
Yeah.
there and was basically retired. That was the plan.
Oh, I got this side. So yeah, so you still practicing martial arts?
I haven't. I've gotten more like into yoga. I'm trying to like tap into that
gotcha.
part of my
Because
personality now.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, because I've written it down. But like you told me you're a black belt, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about how that all came about in terms of like just taking back to the beginning. Like how'd you get into martial arts? How'd you go? Hey, I want to because being a black belt is quite like you need a lot of dedication for that, right?
Yeah, it was a huge part of my life. So my ex-husband and I went on a date, and afterwards he's like, "Do you want to come back to my house and hit pads?" I'm like, "Does that line really work on people?" He's like, "No, I'm not trying to sleep with you. I really like. Do you want to hit pads?"
And then became like Cobra Kai, and then went on.
Yeah, and that was it. Like we went back to his house. I put on boxing gloves for the first time, and I was just hooked. I was like, "This is amazing. I want to do this every day." And so I started training. We started dating, and then that was it. I mean,
Well, note to the single ladies out there: does that actually work? Let us know. We're asking for a friend. But like, where did all that passion come from? Because from like a fitness, martial arts, health and wellness standpoint, like where that stemmed from that one incident, or was it coming from somewhere else?
well, my whole life I've been very athletic. I played junior Olympic softball and volleyball when I was younger. When I was 12 years old, I was pitching underhand fastball like 63 miles an hour in softball and trained
At
with
12?
at 12.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I got to train a little bit with Becky Limke and Ron Bolden, who was the U of A coach, and it was awesome. So sports very early on were a very big part of my life. Unfortunately, so was drinking.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to be about 16, I really couldn't do both at the level I was being called to perform athletically. And I chose partying and I chose drinking, and I just went down that path instead of following.
Did the
sports.
like, was there pressure to achieve? What would you say to like society where when I was growing up, when we were growing up, it was like pass, fail, you are smart or you need to get better. And now it's like, okay, you failed, but here's a participation award. You know, you like, what do you thinking that's turning our society, our youth into a little bit of a, like, you know, soft tissue paper?
Yeah, that's completely unproductive as well. I think the pendulum swung too far to the other side, and we're just trying to find that happy middle and course correct, because the bottom line is like, look, you better learn this early. There's always going to be somebody faster, smarter, prettier, funnier, more powerful, more money. Welcome to life. You know, find your own place in it. But what's fascinating to me is our culture really, like, you even look at the whole survival of the fittest and Darwinism and all this stuff, right? And it was like, only the strong survive. We completely failed to talk about the fact that cooperation was the number one thing that Darwin talked about. We eradicated that from history, only focused on be better, be better, be better. And cooperation is what has allowed us to evolve as a species. And so I don't think it's healthy that winning be the only thing that matter. I do think it's important that there be winners and because we need to learn how to deal with that and be a middle point.
For sure. But I guess it's funny how, like, when you talk about it now, the mentality of when you were the athlete, you didn't think of that at the time. So I wasn't probably as high level an athlete as yourself, but when I went from an athlete and then in swimming, you know, state national age swimming, and then I played soccer, I was cross country athletics. I was very, like, Australia's got that very big, like, you know, sporting culture. You play lots of sports. There's a couple of things that we have in Australia that America doesn't have. Like, there's a particular, you know, long-term athlete development model where they basically say, hey, if you're young, don't be so serious about your sport at 6. Learn to have fun, learn necessary skills. And as you get older, you go from having fun and learning more skills to being more competitive, and that can be the only thing. Whereas over here, it's like, you know, you're a one and done type deal. Yeah. The other part of it is that I remember my old coach, Graham Brewer, he swam for Australia at the Moscow Olympics and Commonwealth Games. And he was like, Michael, if you were as dedicated as an athlete as you are as a coach, you might have been a lot better. But then he was like, but in saying that though, like, you probably wouldn't have been a good coach because you had to learn all those lessons that you failed as an athlete. Yeah. So the thing that I found, like, you found that was similar because you were that person and you were a higher athlete. You mentioned that, like, you're in the cesspool of LA with doing lots of stuff, you know, in that entertainment career. And then you're now teaching. So, like, how'd you go from that to the teaching, and what sort of, like, different perspectives did you learn on the way to be able to be the person to go, hey, I'm now the one giving advice?
Yeah, I mean, that was a journey of failure. I think a lot of us, you know, it's kind of that idea, those who can't do teach, you know? And so that's actually why I got into the mental health field. You know, I was trying to figure my own shit out, right? So after I'm an athlete, that's kind of my direction. That goes away. Now I'm in college, I got into modeling and working in television, and then I became very competitive in that. And I had some great opportunities. When I was in college, I co-hosted a show on NBC, like in my local network. I really had this great dream of being a broadcast journalist. That is what I wanted to do. And then
from NBC to the Valor podcast. What an actual,
I'm winning. Dreams come true. Yeah. So, but it was fascinating because, again, I'm like, oh my God, I'm on top. And then fall from that, right? Because then I started getting really good opportunities more in the adult side of modeling and working for Penthouse and Playboy and everything. And then, of course, that killed my journalism career because they're like, people have seen you naked. You're never going to report hard news. And I was like, well, that's not fair. And it's like, again, welcome to life. There's consequences to things, you know? And so then I really did want to help people. I've always been interested in psychology and personal development, and so I went and I got my master's in human development, went to rehab, got sober, started teaching, and it was a great experience.
I gotcha. So obviously everyone goes through hard times, and, like, obviously you've gone through maybe more harder times than most people or other people. So you can't do anything alone in this world. You have to have people that are with you. So what was, like, I wouldn't say rock bottom, but what was one of those moments that sort of turned you around, and the people that helped you turn your life around?
Yeah, I would say one of the lowest moments was like I had just shot for FHM magazine. I was dating one of the Chargers. I lived in this beautiful place in Newport Beach. So on the surface, everything looked really great. And the reality was I was waking up on my kitchen floor, not knowing what time it was, not knowing what day it was. Like my addiction was really, really advanced at that point. I was very sick, very depressed, very suicidal. And one morning I just called my mom and I'm like, I'm legit gonna kill myself. This isn't like a cry for attention. I need help. And I went to rehab. And so in that case, it was my mom, and there was a couple counselors there that were great, but I went to one of those like $100,000 really bougie treatment centers in Southern California where, you know, it kept me alive. And I did stay sober for a little while after it, so I'm grateful for it. but it didn't really do anything. It just allowed me to press the pause button. I was not ready at that time to really get better.
Yeah.
And so I went to a treatment center years after that actually worked. And it was hellacious. It was aversion therapy where you drink a water glass of Epicac and then drink, just water glasses full of alcohol and just violently throw up for hours on end. You're so sick.
Yeah,
But it worked. It turned my brain off, to where I never craved alcohol again. That was 13 years ago. So.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's like one of those things where, like, after a big night, I'm never doing this again, and then people keep doing it. But yeah, that doesn't sound very good. But like your story is obviously you're very open about it, but there are other people out there, whether it be athletes or even coaches, like strength and conditioning coaches, performance coaches, that are going through that, but in a very like male-dominated environment, we're probably a little bit too proud to sort of seek that help. So, what sort of advice that you can give to people through your journey that, people that are going through it now that may not necessarily want to reach out, you can help them with there?
Well, it's interesting because that's the majority of my clients. They're all high performers. They're very successful. They're very much like me in that way. On the outside, everything looks fine, but internally they know this is either a problem or it's going to become a problem.
Well, it's like what they say, when winning masks a lot of things. So everyone's like, well, let's say the Chiefs, for example, and I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but like, oh, they're winning, it must be all rosy. But underneath, if they start losing, then maybe the things that were problems all along will bubble to the surface. So like everyone's got problems, but yeah, sorry to cut you off there, but like that's sort of like, that's the example, right?
Well, it's a big thing. And I mean, I used to work with a lot of college athletes, and a lot of these individuals have been told ever since they were 6.
They're fantastic.
This is what you are meant to do. You're going to make millions of dollars. All the responsibility for taking care of the family is on you and what you are as an athlete. So God forbid you fail, you don't win, you get injured. Your entire identity is wrapped up in that. And then if we're going to talk about addiction in sports, I mean, opiate misuse. And what's crazy is most people can take opiates responsibly and get off of them. Most people listening have had surgery, even me, and I am an addict. My appendix exploded and I was on Dilaudid for like 2 weeks, which is the strongest opiate on the planet. And I got off of it, never wanted it again. So, everybody's so different. But my point in saying that is if you are hardwired to love opiates, you are screwed if you are on them for any amount of time. And before we would look at addiction like, oh, they're mentally weak or XYZ, they've got a lot going on, they were abused. Obviously, they're drinking, using. With opiates, it's really like you don't know until it's too late if you are the person that's going to get hooked on them. And they are hellacious to come off of. So
yeah, I can. Yeah, I haven't had any experience on that, so I'm gonna touch wood. I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
But speaking, because you mentioned like addiction there, so I've always thought of like in sport, you have the dedication, right? To very regimented, I have to do this to my body to stay healthy, X, Y, and Z. But like, where do you think, if we had to bring the addiction into it, like what something appears to be healthy, regimented, like where does it cross the line into being unhealthy? For example, like people that want to train in the gym 5 times a week, then they don't get enjoyment, they don't see benefits, and they just keep going. Like, is there a line that it crosses from being healthy to unhealthy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, really, when we look at the root of addiction, it is anything we do compulsively. So that word is very important. I am compelled. There's a compulsion to do this, and I have negative consequences. So addictions are on a spectrum, right? Like if I'm an IV user, a heroin addict, homeless, living under a bridge, it can look like that. Or I can be somebody who is compelled to over-exercise. I'm in the gym all the time. I'm not getting the results. I'm in my head. I'm pushing. Obviously, the consequences are going to look a lot different between those two scenarios. But what are the negative consequences? And that is, bringing it back to anybody that's listening that's like, wow, maybe I have a problem. I don't really want to get help. the best thing that anybody can do is do a 21-day cleanse. You know what I mean? Really allow yourself to gauge where you're at with it. Because if you're not at an addictive level, you should be able to go 21 days without a substance, a behavior, whatever your thing is.
Well, how do athletes, like, I know we're sticking on the sport spectrum, but like even health, health and wellness, aficionados, if you will, like if they're within a team or they're at a jiu-jitsu club or they're in a spinning class where they go in groups, and how do they do that 21-day cleanse when they're in a team environment, so to speak, whether it's going to Orange Theory or going to whatever, going on those Saturday morning run clubs where everyone's like, I wish I could run over these guys. But, those types of groups, how do they get that cleanse when they feel compelled to like not stop?
Well, I mean, within that context, it would be just doing what's asked of you, because when it's at an addictive level, those people are going home and also training at night. They're going on the extra run. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing what is being advised by a coach or expected as your job, then that's what's expected. Certainly you're not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to take a 3-week vacation, bye. But it's not going overboard with it. It would be doing like the necessary training and not overdoing it.
Do you think people do these health and wellness, mental health behaviors to mask pain, trauma, whether it be physical or mental?
I think one of the greatest addictions ever is to healing. I mean, like, I know people, they're just constantly doing the next thing. They're doing the next therapy. They're doing the next,
TV, you're the Wall Street banker, and all of a sudden it's gone. Like, what are some of strategies that you can sort of give them to cope, if you will?
It's fascinating because to me, a lot of it is prevention. It starts way before they retire.
Yeah, but they're trying to fill the void of that high.
Going to replace that high either. Let's just be real. So you got to channel that into passions. And just realize it's going to take a little while for the brain to reset. When you're used to spikes like that, if I'm going to walk out on the field with, millions of people watching me, nothing is going to give that to you. So it's about knowing that, and then it's about finding things that are more heart-centered, like truly passionate, and about letting the brain recalibrate, to not need so much dopamine.
Yeah. So you walk into, because we worked at University of Nevada, Reno, you walk into a classroom of student athletes, or you walk into a classroom of just students. Because like the guys that are, and the girls that are at pros right now in their 30s, now, if they haven't set that up previously, they have to figure it out when they retire. But the kids that are in college right now, they have a chance, right?
Yeah.
So what's some of the tips and advice you give them before they essentially go to that next step?
Well, it's hard because when you're trying to be the best in the world, it's something, it has to be your entire focus, right? So it's like, again, just how do you find that balance? How do you not see yourself as only that? I'm only an athlete, It's like you are also a son. You are also a husband. You are also a daughter. You are also, a part of this community and this whole. And allowing yourself to have things that don't take up a whole lot of time, but passions and strong connections, that's everything. Yeah. So the people that retire that have really good support systems, like you were talking about before, like really solid net of people around them, do much better than those that don't. And it even happens within sports. Like I was dating a guy once, and when he played for Cincinnati, he was like kind of stressed out and kind of got the high, and it was kind of cool. Like, I'm in the pros. And then he went to the Yankees, and it was a whole different ballgame. It was like, oh my God, I can't handle this anymore. It's too much. Yeah. So even within, pros, there's a lot of trying to manage emotions. And that's what we're talking about, is emotional intelligence. So the same things that make you a really good player on the field, it's like you have to be able to transition those skills into life. When things don't go your way, how do you manage those emotions and keep moving forward and redirect? Like, you can apply those same skills to, oh my God, I am used to being so-and-so, the NFL player, and now I'm just another older dude on the block, How do you deal with adversity? Transition those skills.
But there, like you mentioned before, there are a lot of fads out there that these individuals will follow blindly, right? And they won't get better. So, what are some of the out of the box methods to help, recovery, whether it be physical, mental, spiritual, that is not really, people don't really know about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of my big passions is psychedelic therapy, and we are learning a lot more about it now. It is a lot more mainstream than it ever was before, and thanks to organizations like MAPS, we're really understanding how MDMA therapy can treat trauma, especially in veterans. There's just so much clinical research about the power of psilocybin to help, the neuroplasticity of the brain rewire and heal. So I believe those medicines, when used appropriately in the correct set and setting,
I gotcha.
can be very amazing tools in aiding the therapy process, because the problem a lot of times is in traditional therapy, you just sit and you just keep telling your story. Well, all you're doing is reaffirming your story. Your small self is just complaining and emoting, and that's necessary. We need to do that. We need to have a compassionate witness hear what we went through, and we need to acknowledge and feel and validate all that we're feeling. And then what? You know what I mean? Like that, we don't want to stay stuck in that. So I believe psychedelic therapy has a lot of benefits for a lot of people, not everyone. If there's any history of psychosis or, extreme bipolar disorder, mania, anything, you don't want to give those people psychedelics. So there needs to be intense screening. But that, for me, is really where I see a lot of benefit for people.
What about for those that are experiencing burnout? Like right now in my industry, there's a lot of strength coaches, athletic trainers that are leaving the team sport environment and going into more of a structured, or I wouldn't say structured, maybe more of a safety job, whether it be working for a tech company or working for a private facility. Like, how do you, some strategies to help prevent burnout? Is it the same as the other things we've spoken about, or is it a little bit different?
It's really hard. Burnout is another one of those. Like with opiates, when I said by the time you recognize it, it's too late.
Yeah.
A lot of times with burnout, we know we're getting there, but we don't know how to course correct, or we're not able to. You can't just tell your boss, I need 3 weeks off, or, XYZ. I do think that having a good support network, people that you can talk to, whether that's a therapist, a partner, or friends, that's important. And then it's just being really honest with yourself, but eat right, sleep well. I mean, back to basics. So often that's really what we need to do. And it's those little micro adjustments in our life that matter the most. My favorite study I think they ever did, because it was so enlightening, is they looked at people who had something really traumatic happen, like they had an arm amputated. And they looked at people that had something great, like they won the lottery. And within 6 months of something horrible or something amazing happening, people returned to their set point of happiness. Their baseline is going to be returned to relatively quickly. So what we want to do is incrementally up that baseline of happiness. And how do we do that? Solid connections, rest, like taking care of ourselves, hobbies, eating well, all of those things.
I gotcha. So how do you combat, I wouldn't say, how do you combat that, or how do you optimize that when the whole world right now is being distracted by technology and social media? So all those things you mentioned tend to drop, because social media is like a very vicious sort of place, and whether it be actors or people in the media or athletes, they're all scrolling, they're all seeing criticism, all good things that might give them a big head to make them think they're invincible. But how do you sort of combat that with everyone being attached to their phone on their hip and Instagram and whatnot these days?
Yeah, it's such a hard position for a lot of people, because they know that they feel bad when they're on social media, but then there's that fear of but if you're not on it, you're going to fall behind. It's like FOMO at the highest level. And sometimes it's for business, you're like, no, I need to have this because this is how I promote myself. So it is that delicate balance, but I just think it's important for people to go, okay, when I do this thing, do I feel better or worse? You know, and really tune in and feel, how does it feel in my body when I'm done with this? And what's fascinating is the data is in. We know social media is bad for you. 100%, there is no question about it. Like, overall, mental health has declined rapidly. You can check out any podcast on this subject, and you know, people that are a lot smarter than me will tell it.
On Netflix about it. I can't remember, was it the whatever documentary was called, but there was like, you know, young kids on that social media, and it's just like essentially brainwashing them to a degree.
It's awful, and adults are really small kids too. So we are not exempt from those same things, you know, that are happening to development and all the comparison and overall mental health, right? Like, it's not good for us. But I will tell you, I'm seeing a big shift. And I I read this article recently, and it's basically the dead internet theory that said we're going to get to a point where it's just robots promoting and selling products to other robots, and I feel like we've hit it. I mean, there is still a small subsection.
Well, you mentioned like people buying bots to get more likes on social media. Is that part of it as well?
Oh my God, it's gross.
Just try to like fulfill their own happiness because I got extra amount of followers.
Yes, and it's all a facade. It is we gave you a trophy even though you know you just got your ass kicked. Like, you know, you don't have real followers, that you paid some bots. So like, I don't understand it, but that's what everything is pay to play that you're seeing online. There were people that organically grew accounts, and there still are for sure, but they are the minority. The majority of people that you see have publicists, they are buying likes and follows, and it's, you know, it is a pay to play world. And again, that's not even to say that it's necessarily wrong. And if you're getting value from the content they put out, by all means, that's wonderful. But it's like, how do you really reevaluate? Is this getting me what I want? You know, do I feel better or worse after doing it? I mean, for me, I had to really step back. I pushed hard. I grew my account. I had, you know, the million views and all this stuff. And I'm like, what did it do for me?
Yeah, I gotcha.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it didn't get me where I want to go. So reevaluating, but yeah, the amount of time spent on it is awful. The biggest shift in social media right now, my understanding, is it's going to micro communities. It's going to smaller platforms, which I love. And it's more like really like-minded people coming together in a smaller community and space. And I think that can be really powerful. I
gotcha. So like back to the college example though, because I think the kids that are on the most are the college kids, right? And I can't remember exactly, so I'm not going to say what college it was, but there was an incident where the basketball player, and he was accused of might have been a sexual assault or whatnot, and he's like one of the star players, and I believe so. Yeah, don't quote me on this, but like there was an incident, and he was innocent, and he got off. But the time that he was being accused and going through all the legalities of it, it was being hammered on social media. And I don't know because I don't follow it that much, but hypothetical, like let's say at the time he was a star player playing awesome, then he goes and plays like crap during that pressure cooker. Yeah. He's probably going home, and what's he doing? He's looking at all the comments. I remember when Joe Rogan was like, I never read the comments on my YouTube page because it's like, you know, I'll go crazy. So again, if you had the opportunity to get in front of this, not Gen Z, but what's a new generation? Well, you would know this. What's the new generation now? It's like Gen Alpha or something crap like that. You go in front of that generation where they're in college and they're like, you know, got the iPads, the iPhones, the goggles, the virtual stuff, whatever. How do you tell them to like just stay away from that negative criticism online?
It's so hard because that's how they connect. You know, like the phone is literally an extension of their arm, right? Their hand.
My mum was saying that like when I got my first mobile phone, it was a Nokia, and we had Snake, right, on that. And I was like, now the phones have become like a laptop or a computer. Everything is on there. So yeah, I get what you're saying there, but.
I mean, a lot of it is, I think, show them the data. Like, scare tactics don't work. I mean, I remember DARE programs in school, you know, and all this stuff, and they would come in and tell you worst case scenarios and try to scare you.
Kids at 18 care about the data?
So here's my thing. I think when the data speaks to what matters to them, they will care and they will pay attention. And I think that a lot of it is just learning by doing. And so it's really sad, but it's almost like some of these cancel culture things that happen at that high level are opportunities for everyone to decide how much of their worth do they want to place on this screen, and it opens up important dialogue. So when I say talk about the data, I don't mean in a boring PowerPoint presentation. I mean talk about how this applies in real life, have real conversations with people, because they've all been bullied on social media. They all know how awful it is when you compare your actual life to somebody's highlight reel. We all know now that it's completely fake. I mean, looking at men and women that are AI generated, I mean, that takes all the filters and all that.
Definitely double checking and doing a double take when you get on a page. Oh, look at this. Oh my God, that's AI. Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and anybody that's ever been on a dating app knows that a lot of times people don't look like that. Just go on Hinge for a week and you'll understand that it's not real, So I think it's just important to have these conversations. And again, it's like, who are you without the world telling you,
Yeah.
It's so important to know. And sometimes we learn that through this shatter, and having something like this happen to this young man. And it's so awful. And just remembering that anybody can say anything online.
For sure.
At any time.
And then in America, it's like the whole freedom of speech. So you can say as many bad things as you want as long as you don't cross a line, which is an interesting concept in itself, right?
Yeah.
But you are obviously a professional in this and you've studied and put a lot of years into it, but then you might go into that classroom or that football team in college and say all these great things, and then for 5 minutes they're like, wow, and then they forget about it. So what are some strategies that you can give coaches that are looking at them day to day, or network executives or whatever environment you have? But let's stick to the sport example for a second, because it seems to be like recently a lot of college athletes are unfortunately taking their own lives, which is quite sad. But you leave and they have all this great advice, but then they go back to seeing day to day, like their strength coaches, their sports scientists, their position coaches, their head coach. What can those people do to maintain the range of the advice that you have given them? Because you can't be in that building all the time.
No, and it's always how it happens, right? You can come in and deliver just like a killer keynote and everyone's like, damn, and then immediately goes back to what they were doing, and that's always how it works. For me, it's about creating a culture of permission, peer-to-peer, to intervene. Like when you have a group of individuals who truly support one another's highest growth. Like I used to work with a lot of fraternities, for example, and it's like it was right at the height of the Me Too movement, where it was just like, oh my God, every single guy on a college campus felt like he was being called a rapist. I mean, it was just, tensions were so high, and it was like, it's kind of a weird example, but this is the best one. Like, instead of talking to people like they're predators, talk to them as if they are heroes. And it's like, you guys are protecting one another. So if you see your friend go with some girl that's intoxicated, go intervene. And that was actually where we started seeing some change, because it wasn't like, you're bad, this is awful, shame. It created a culture where it was like, yo, we all want to live a good life. We want to party, we want to have fun, we want to have sex, we want to do all this, but we want to do it and not have negative consequences, not hurt people. So it was actually peer-to-peer. They were monitoring each other and helping each other. And when they saw somebody that was getting too far out of control with drugs and alcohol or whatever, they had a culture of permission to say, hey, I'm worried about you. And so the more that teams can do that, because let's be real, when it comes to a sport, you are not the thing that matters. It is the team.
Yeah.
That is always going to be the North Star. Like Yellowstone is one of my favorite shows. The ranch and saving the ranch is, every goal is going to be about that.
Well, unless you're like the quarterback or whatever.
Yeah, but it's like, it's still about winning,
Yeah,
so when
for sure.
somebody's behavior is going to interrupt that, there has to be a culture of permission to where it's like, we got each other.
Yeah.
And it's done peer-to-peer,
It's like what we called back in one of the teams in Australia I worked for, is like the bubble or the inner sanctum, or like as the coach at the time, he would talk about having like and you guys might be foreign in America, you don't have a lot of electric kettles, but basically keeping the lid on the kettle and
Yeah.
just don't let it blow open. Keep it all bottled in. It's all for the team, right? But with the landscape we're going into the college sports now with NIL, do you think things are going to get worse? Because now these kids are, before, like one of my colleagues called it, like they were getting paid anyway. They were getting in those big programs, they're getting like $500,000 or $300,000 to $500,000 worth of like free stuff with the scholarship they had and stipends. But now they're physically getting paid.
Yeah.
You think things could potentially get worse with, like you talk about pressure, and that pressure leading you to do stupid things or sometimes harmful things? Do you think, how do you see that going? Because these are young kids.
Yeah.
They're 18. They, as you mentioned before, they come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They're providing for their single parent. All of a sudden, they go from nothing to getting thrown $500,000 at them.
Yeah.
So what do you see that? What can of worms have we opened?
I mean, on the one hand, I'm so glad that they are getting paid. They make universities and colleges and towns so much money, and God forbid you get injured or something and you only get to play in college and never get to make that money. I'm glad that they are getting their cut, and holy hell. I mean, I made a decent amount of money modeling sometimes, and it does. It changes you. And it changed me. So I think you'll have somebody who's a little bit more grounded, less egotistical and cocky as I was. And they'll be like, this is an awesome opportunity. I'm so humbled and grateful for it. And they're going to take it even more seriously because there's more to lose.
Yeah.
The other part of the population is like, can you imagine being 20 and somebody gives you $5 million?
Yeah.
Like, and you're already living in this, like, look at me type, where people are telling you how amazing you are at any given moment. And how do you tell those people too? It's like, don't do anything you can't recover from. That's it. That's all we're talking about here, Like, you're going to find your edge in all these different ways and enjoy yourself by all means. But I mean, at this stage, you really have to know that everything is going to be seen. There's no such thing as privacy.
For sure.
Like, I'm so glad that during my early 20s, there was no social media. Like, I think there was MySpace. Like, we weren't filming and putting things out there, Thank God. Now everything, you just have to know. Your coaches, everybody is going to see it. Everything you do is going to be out there. So you better, before you act, think about that. If everyone sees this, what does that do?
Yeah.
And the problem is, when you've had 18 drinks, you're not thinking. So you better have people around you who can help you in those times. And I hate to say it, but that at the end of the day, when you say, what do you do? It is that peer-to-peer culture of we're going to protect one another, even from ourselves.
For sure. So here's a couple of things, because like you brought up some good points about like, the team is the most important thing. And you're right. Like they always say no one's above the team. But from a positive standpoint, but then you got the negative standpoint of it's all about the team, because when the team cuts you and you're no longer relevant and they just leave you in the dirt, like when you're performing or you're, I should say, important to the success of the team, they treat you like God. But when you're no longer important, they throw you and you're done. And you see that a lot, right? So what are some like guardrails that you would essentially suggest, recommend for those scenarios?
It's almost like something that's so relatable as a horrible breakup, right? If you've made that person the only thing that matters in your life, you're only friends with their friends, you have no world outside of them, you have no sense of self, all your eggs are in one basket, you're financially dependent only on them, and it goes away. Yeah, that's a massive thing to try to work through. When you have your own interests, when you have a good support system, when you know who you are independent from that, you're going to be much better positioned to navigate that. But the bottom line is it's just going to suck. And using those opportunities of intense pain as an opportunity to grow. Because when you're so empowered that the thing that you love the most goes away and you don't fall apart and you do rebuild and you do regroup and you move forward, that's what we all want. That's true resilience. And to take it a step further, we don't want to just be resilient. We don't want to just survive something painful like that. Grit is actually what makes you a great athlete and makes you great at pivoting and readjusting. That is bring it. You know, you actually like those challenges. That is going to help you recreate your life, because we're all doing it. I've recreated mine 4 or 5 times, you know, and it's the people who can pivot that really talk about that set point of happiness, you know. They don't fall apart because they know who they are no matter where they are, or who's telling them this is who you are, you know?
Yeah, I got you. So you talk a lot about support systems and relationships. Like, what does it mean? Like, when people say, oh, I want a meaningful relationship, like, what does that mean for you or to you?
For me, it is, you know, there is vulnerability. You're not just getting the highlight reel. You're not just getting this version of me that I'm going to show in a job interview or, you know, with clients. It's like really letting yourself authentically be known. And then there's loyalty, and then it's 50-50, and both people put energy and time into it. And it's, you know, there's a lot of compassion and support. And then there's a lot of fun, you know, but it's really the vulnerability piece is what's lacking in a lot of connections.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Because you're just meeting my mask.
Yeah.
So it's like really allowing, you know, we're seeing so many more like men's groups pop up, and they're doing it really well. Like, there's all this research that shows men do really well, like fishing, because they'll open up and talk because they're side by side instead of face to face. So people are diving into this, and men really need other men, you know, truly, for that.
Yeah, because like I got some of my boys. Shout out to Tim DeLeo and Matt Viducci. You're my boys. You know who you are. Like, there's things that I can. Oh, I'll give Evan. Evan's a good dude. Come on, Evan. But like, there are things that I'll tell those guys that I won't tell. I'm youngest of 3. I got 2 older sisters. I got mom, dad. He gave up. He's batting for the. He because obviously like he's outnumbered. You got three women in one. So every time I go, Dad, he's like, nah, your mother. I was like, oh, okay. So I got to talk to my boys about like just things that I can't talk to. Well, I can, but like don't want to. It's like guy stuff, right? Because I don't have a brother or anything like that, and I can deal with these people. So I get it. And when I talk to, particularly, you know, because I'm about 10 years older than my colleagues here, and they're all about texting and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, no, get your ass on the phone.
Yeah.
Answer my damn call. If I have to hear your voicemail message one more time, I'm gonna beat you up. But that's, you know, I get that. But obviously, like, you haven't come to all these conclusions just overnight. Like, you've had a very, you know, based off the conversation today, you've had like a very, you know, difficult but sounds like fulfilling journey, right?
Yeah.
Like, how has that, from the beginning of where you were as an athlete to your addiction challenges and all the sacrifices you've made, like, how has that shaped you to be the person you are today? And how can you give the advice to those young athletes out there, or just young individuals that may feel hopeless and don't know a direction in their life? Like, how can you help them?
Yeah, that's a really like tender spot for me, because I was that teenager that just was in so much despair and so much hopelessness. And it's just remembering that, like, the only time healing is impossible is when we are gone, you know? And I didn't think I would ever get better. I really didn't. I didn't think it would happen for me. So I think what happens for a lot of individuals when they are feeling that despair, especially in today's new age psychology and positive psychology, it was like, if you don't believe it, it's never going to happen. And I'm here to say you actually don't even need to. Like, faith is great. If you have faith that you can get better, be better, that makes it so much easier. But speak into the 1% that's like, I don't even have that. I don't think it's going to get better. It still can. And so it's so important to ask for help, you know, and to not let it get too heavy and to not be carrying that burden alone. And, you know, and running a martial arts school for the 8 years that I was there, I know too many of our students. I mean, I'm talking 5 or 6 young men that have committed suicide. And these were wonderful individuals. They were smart and fun and handsome, and their families loved them. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that behind closed doors they weren't dealing with a lot of stuff. Obviously they were. But you never would have guessed, you know? And so often the friends that I've lost, I never would have known. And that's what I'm talking about when I say like the vulnerability piece is like when you see somebody really, how are you? You know, instead of that surface level, like slap each other on the back, go to the field, come home, you know, suffer in silence. It's like really being able to say, I'm not okay, and knowing that that is okay. Like being human is so hard. And it is not even just what happens to us that hurts. A lot of times it's what didn't happen. You know, the dad we didn't have, the love we didn't get. You know, in this social media world, we are really lacking attunement, you know, and I love it, just the analogy of the tuning fork. This one goes, this one goes. Yeah. There's a vibrational resonance when we really connect that we're missing a lot of. And especially with younger people, the way they connect is with substances. It's going out to the bar, you know, and I'm not even saying that that's wrong or bad. That can be a beautiful piece of what you are doing. But you have to have those real moments with other people. And so no matter how bad it has gotten, you can turn it around. And that is the biggest thing that people need to know.
Well, I love that. And thanks for sharing. I think that's probably a good segue into our little last segment. I told you at the beginning, it's like a little, a new thing. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the name for it. It's like Valor roulette or spin the Valor wheel. I don't know what it is, but Will, if you're able to bring me the little bag down there. So this is us, our attempt to have a little bit of fun with the podcast. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. So we've got our little wheel here. So we've got a couple of categories. We've got like sliding doors, you up, hold the line. So you're telling me there's a chance. Chasing waterfalls. This isn't where I park my car. Unsung heroes, take the L, history lessons, and touchdown. So basically, get you to spin the wheel as best you can, and we'll have some questions that come to the particular category.
I love it. All right.
Give it a big spin. Get those big muscles. Oh, come on. You can do better.
I know, but it
going.
seems fragile.
No, just go for it. Go. There you go. This isn't where I park my car.
That's a good one for me. I'm always using my car.
So, what's a belief or position you were once all in on, only to realize later that you had it wrong? And what changed and how did you respond?
Great question. Oh, I'm so stubborn and hard-headed. A lot of times I don't change my beliefs, but I do sometimes.
We have all day. It's all good.
Well, I mean, when COVID hit, being a small business owner, and then also, you know, my connection to especially the kids that were at our school, I was devastated that I couldn't see them. And I was very angry about the lockdowns, and I felt that it was such a gross overstep and overreach of, you know, what was happened as far as lockdowns. And I haven't shifted my position on that completely, but I was able to talk to enough people and really hear their fear and have compassion for that other side, where before I was just, you know, all in, this is wrong, this can't happen. I had no space for another perspective of the fear that people were holding. And so that was one time that I was certainly able to like find the center of something, you know, that I felt very strongly about. So just, I think that that's important though. Like I was able to hear people, hear their fear. And it was, again, like it was talking to somebody whose mother was very, very sick, that was terrified about what's going to happen to her. And it was like, yeah, you know, you can easily put yourself in that person's position. And I was able to hold both better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. And again, the privilege to have the first Valor Wheel, Valor Roulette. We'll come up with a name for it. But Jo, you're an amazing person. Thanks for coming in and having a chat.
Thank you. This is awesome. I loved it.
Awesome. Yeah.